And recording. Okay, I want to lead you in the Pledge of Allegiance, and ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Report the attendance of all board members. And see if we have student council report this quarter.
I do not believe we have a student council report tonight. And just for the members of the public that are on Zoom, if you want to send us a chat to let us know if you're having struggles with any kind of technical issues, we're hoping that our microphones and everything's working well tonight. I would just ask the board members to hold the microphones close to their mouths so we can get nice, clear audio coming into our camera microphone system. So, okay, Fernando also is here tonight, our tech support, to help us. If you have any issues, you can just wave at Fernando, and that way he can help cover any of those issues we might have as well. So to make a long story short, no student council report that I'm aware of tonight.
Okay, do we have a finance committee?
We do. So, and I'm going to stand here so that the public can see me. We had a finance committee actually just a couple days ago, June 16th. And at the finance committee, we really looked a lot at basically our budgets that will be presented to you tonight. So I'm not going to go too much into the finance committee information because all that's broken out on slides that you'll be able to see tonight in my presentation for the new budget year. But it was held. We looked at our year-to-date actuals. I'll be showing that in my director's report as well in terms of where our finances are for this current school year. And then I'll be providing more information for you in regards to our new budgets, what we talked about mostly with finance committee.
All right, thank you very much. Well, we'll get into the executive director's report, Mr. Gordon, if you're ready for that.
Yeah, I guess it's me a lot. And I'll use a microphone just to make sure. All right. The report tonight's fairly short because most of what I have to share is in the body of the agenda we have in our discussion and action session. So we are pretty proud of the fact that we're getting new floors at California Street. The removal of the old floors is currently going on right now as we speak through even into Saturday this weekend, and then they should be done removing floors, and then the new flooring will start hopefully as soon as next week and be done by July 1. We were able to find some really good affordable removal companies and flooring install companies, and so we're really happy with that. And I felt comfortable releasing those funds based on the board's discussion last time to use some of that money that we've had as carryover to get those projects done. I think I told you last time bathrooms are done. We've got some new fans out on the shade structure for Bryant Street as well. So good job to, I know Kathy Cope had a lot of work to do with that, and Lisa, others out there helping out, so keeping our kids cool during the year. We have our drainage project that is done. Domestic landscaping, I believe, did that for us, a local group for the drainage issues on our property on California Street that we've dealt with in the past. And we have some other minimal projects going on currently that are going on throughout the schools. But anyhow, really happy about that. We have, I'm going to stop there because I'm going to go into some information that I'll share later. But in terms of any other information, we currently have one position in terms of a teaching position that we may need to fill. And so we're working through some applications and some possibilities with internal folks as well in regards to filling that position. We have summer school starting off June 23rd. That's like what, next Tuesday? Right, Mrs. Irvin? She's shaking her head over there. And so that's going to be awesome. That's going to be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays for 4 weeks. It's 12 days total, if I recall correctly. And I'll be there to make sure that she doesn't fall over that day or get 3,000 questions about to mask or not to mask and those kinds of ideas. But we'll talk a little bit more about that tonight. Other than that, that's my director's report. I thought I'd show you the dashboard that I give to the board each month at our monthly meetings. So you have to excuse me, I'm going to sit down for just a moment. And let's minimize this out of here. All right, nothing to report on in terms of attendance, but I thought in terms of our finances, you'd like to see where we're at as of May 31st. Hats off to Tracy. She's worked tirelessly to get all of this together, concurrent budgets as well as future budgets and what have you. So cash flow is on the screen. I want to make sure And Mr. Osborne, if you wouldn't mind logging in, if anybody has a computer to Zoom, just to make sure that the screen share is working. I've noticed in the past at times it doesn't when I move between programs. So, okay. Well, currently you're not on Zoom. So currently it's just going to be, this is just on my screen, but the public should be able to see this screen, and I'm hoping they can. Cash flow statement. So right now, cash at the end of the period is at $9,557,943. This is just a visual of that. I just like to make it look fancy. You can see our balance sheet, about just over $10 million for the balance sheet as of May 31st. Move down. I know you like to see where our investments are at in terms of money that's in the bank. And I don't know why that bank. And I know Mr. Stringer, Dr. Stringer, you ask about that once in a while, so I make sure I put that in monthly for you with On Point Financial. So there's, you can see our balances starting from January. It's hard, I'm sorry, this projector is not as clear as I would hope, but you can kind of see the progression from January to April to May. So the markets for CDs and where we have our money in terms of protected types of investments is strong. Okay, good, thank you. Any questions on the dashboard? And just to let you know, Tracy's working on our interim reports for the district, our end of the year and our actuals. And so those are looking very strong. Our that net income number right there is basically your surplus at the end of the year after all of your expenses of $934,000. We're guesstimating that's going to go down closer to about $900,000 once some of these COVID expenditures and different kinds of costs come through with our projects. So still very, very strong. I think our budgets, when they were initially enacted, were somewhere around $850,000 in terms of carryover. So we're above that by probably about $50,000. Okay. That's my director's report for today.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Public participation. I'm going to open the public participation session of tonight's meeting and ask anyone in the audience like to speak to the board on any item on the agenda or of interest.
Dr. Stringer, I'm going to just peruse the chat boxes to see if anybody is interested in chatting with the board online first, and then we can move to anyone that's in the audience.
All right, thank you.
In fact, I'm sorry, let's switch that. If anybody in the audience would like to speak first, I will look through the online group to see if we have anybody that's interested online as well. So we'll start with the folks that are in-house.
Oh, okay. So, Mr. Osborne, welcome.
Thank you. I just wanted to bring to your attention there is an item G on your agenda. It's something that we're asking you to approve. This teacher is on my campus, and I just wanted to come forward and say I fully support it. So I would like you to know that I see this teacher as very dedicated, and I think it'd be great if you could honor it. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Osborne.
It's my understanding too, Mr. Osborne, that the teacher has also had perfect attendance this last year.
Yeah, absent two times in 3 years.
Absence 2 times in 3 years, so very, very strong attendance. I know sometimes that's something that the board asks.
Okay, I'm lost.
You said approve item G.
G, consent calendar, special considerations, go into the back.
We weren't on that.
That's all right.
It just says business function.
And so let me pull
wait
it
a
up for
second.
you.
H? You mean H?
Yeah, hey, Josh, you got to come up and help me, buddy. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Let me pull it up for you.
There's a
I don't know
special
what
request.
I'm allowed to discuss.
Like
Yeah,
you want-
H.
Yeah,
so
what are you here? What are you trying to do?
We have a teacher who's asking if she could.
Just read it right there, John.
Sure.
It's on that current agenda.
Yeah,
Teacher who requests.
speak very loudly, very clearly.
A teacher requests to take leave without pay for August 12th, 13th, 14th to move freshman daughter to college. I feel like it's an event that can't be missed. We have a very, very, very dedicated teacher. So if you got to that item and you weren't sure the site principal's opinion on it, I just wanted to let you know that I support it.
Yeah, it's because you have the rough draft.
All right.
In the dark.
And that's my fault.
I have no- well, that's what- no, we have no idea.
All right, thank you, Mr. Osborne. Anyone else in the audience who would like to speak to the board on any item on the agenda? Or,
Yeah, I saw it after that, but.
or of any interest associated with the school? All right, seeing
Hold on,
hearing
let me
none.
double
Is there
check.
any,
We have a question from Mrs. Sanchez on our Zoom meeting, so I'm going to try and unmute her so that she would have an opportunity to talk. Also, no, Mrs. Sanchez, the board is not required to answer questions during board meetings. It's a public meeting, so it's not really necessarily a back and forth type of process. But you're more than welcome to converse with any of the principals and I in terms of answers if we can't give them tonight. But you can, by any means, talk with the board at leisure about any item that you're interested in talking about. So I'll let you, I think you're unmuted now and you should be able to be heard.
Okay, can you guys hear me all right?
Good.
All right. I have a lot of contact with a lot of parents, a lot of families who don't necessarily get a chance to come onto the board meetings, and I try to attend regularly. So a question that's been circulating around through all of the parents, and I'm sure you guys have probably heard it and you will address it, but I just want to make sure, is with expected changes for the school year, what's to come, if parents are not comfortable with sending their children back to school, if there's certain restrictions made or whatever, and they decide to do like a homeschooling type thing, are they going to then lose their physical place in the classroom if the COVID concerns go away? So that's, if that makes sense, it is something that we just, I've been hearing a lot about it, and feel it's important to kind of put it out there on behalf of all the parents.
let me see if I understand the question. The question is if a parent who's has students currently enrolled and does something other than coming back full time, are they at risk of losing their position in the school? I mean, is that basically what your concern is?
Yeah, if, like, let's say the requirements are something they're not comfortable with for returning in the fall, and they want to then continue with like the iSchool or homeschooling, if that's even an option. I know you guys are still trying to come up with a plan. So this was like a preliminary, if those restrictions were something they weren't comfortable with and they chose to then do like a distance learning, would they be then giving up their physical spot at the school if and when those restrictions were lifted?
Got it. I think what you're going to find is, and again, the state came out with some interesting proposals. The county superintendent in a local paper today said all the local districts are expected to do it. And I think the district is coming out with a big board meeting on the 26th too. So the whole process is kind of underway. But the last thing we want to do is disadvantage students one way or the other. So we're going to do everything possible to make it possible for parents to continue or continue. But we can't say right now what it'll look like or how it'll work in precise terms. But it's certainly going to be a whole lot of discussion in the next few weeks. I hope that's helpful.
And I'll share some development of the iSchool program tonight that actually addresses that very question.
Okay, anything else?
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in or calling in or zooming in or whatever you did. All right, I'm going to close the public participation session of tonight's meeting and move into the discussion action section. The action item before us, folks, is a board policy in the COVID-19 situation. And the administration is recommending the adoption of that board policy. Mr. Gordon, I know you've been dealing with this and dealing with our attorney.
Correct. Let me share my screen so that the public can also see what I'm looking at. Okay. Okay, so just as an introduction, Richard Heinsberger and his partner Erica Klein had developed a board policy for us to take a look at. I know I sent that to you as part of an email earlier in the week, and some of you had an opportunity to look at that. I did go through and highlight and make some changes since that time. So I wanted you to see some of those changes that I did make. The first one just being that there was a link that really wasn't linking anywhere at this point. And so I took off the link in terms of what the requirements are in terms of reporting COVID-19 cases that come to the school, and just said per their requirements. So County Public Health, per their requirements, we're going to report. Of course, it's usually a telephone call to County Health in regards to the reporting of a COVID case or communicable disease case. So that's not a big deal. I did change the stay home when sick from 48 hours, you might have seen, to 72 hours throughout the document. Most everything that I've been seeing recently has been 72 hours, 3 days, in regards to staying home when sick. If they have the symptoms, there's a combination of 10 days at home and 3 days, and I won't get into too many of the weeds, but you can see that there in the policy. That link also works correctly when you go to the CDC about what to do when you have the virus or you've been around others with the virus. What are you required to do? So we're basically just following what the CDC requirements are for students or families that would have COVID-19 that have come in contact with our sites. Okay?
Like for the 72 hours, are the kids eligible for independent study?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
We
that
want to
still
do,
applies
yes.
for us?
Yeah, so anytime a student goes off is sick, we would ask them to do the independent study as part of that. Okay. I also added the appropriate use of personal protective equipment, PPE, as part of our curriculum for students, and it wasn't in there initially, and that's if they choose that option. So if students weren't PPE in there, I felt like if they were playing with things and it wasn't really appropriate use of it, we probably should be teaching them how to use it well when they're in our classroom. So that's the only reason I added that. I added station to basically when we report illnesses and they go to the health office, working with our registered nurse, our school registered nurse, her opinion was, let's put stations outside. We felt like it would be safer. You could distance kids a little better. The health office is not a big space. And so that triage for kids, if they have temperatures or issues, would be outside and an easy up. And that would be the station that we would use to be able to kind of keep some distance and keep it a little bit more isolated that way. So that's just the addition of the word station. Other than that, I think everything else for the most part is the same. I know Erica, our legal advisor, is also on the call if you have any questions. There was a proclamation today by Governor Newsom, I don't know if any of you have heard that, about the requirement of masks in the state of California. And talking with Erica just briefly before, and actually getting an email from her as well, is not mandated for schools at this time. So that has to do with paying for it at the same time in terms of mandated costs. If the governor makes mandates of that sort towards schools, they have to pay for that. And so they're not interested in doing that. They're distancing themselves a little bit from the payment for masks and what have you. But I know as our school, we've been trying to maintain an optional mask policy at this point, and that's what you have in this policy. Any questions? I mean, we can take a motion to
I have a question.
go.
So and I'm bringing up this as an example to address if this occurs during the school year. The last couple of days of the school year, students were to show up at school to pick up their supplies. It was supposed to be mandatory that the students were wearing masks along with the families. However, several students and the families still walked onto the school grounds and obtained their belongings. When our staff addressed this with the families, that where's your mask? You're not supposed to be here. How'd you get on campus? The family said, I don't have one mask if I don't want to. So my question is, in the event that the governor says, you shall wear a mask, right? We're doing everything we can to make it optional. That's going to be our kind of policy, if you will. But at the moment the governor says you shall wear a mask, we're going to have, I believe we're going to have kids who are still going to come to school without masks on. And their parents are going to say, you can't order my kid to wear a mask. It's their First Amendment right, and so on and so forth. I want to make sure that we're in a position to address that if it comes up. And I don't know the best way to do it. My thought is we have a waiver, and we essentially, you sign this waiver saying, hey, this is what we're doing, but in the event this occurs, then this will be what we do until that's over. Mm-hmm. And if you don't follow the rules, essentially, you have two options. Option number one, distance learning. Option number two, find another school. So I think for the board and Mike and staff here, I don't know what your guys' opinion of that is, but it's going to happen. We're going to have kids and families say, well, I'm not going to wear it. And it's kind of like the dress code thing, right? Casey, you still deal with that. We say you're going to do it. We discipline kids. They still show up not wearing dress code. So it's going to happen with a mask, except this is a little more serious than a dress code.
Yeah.
So I just think as an institution, we should have something in play. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. And I've got Erica. Erica, did you hear a little bit of that discussion? I unmuted you, and I don't know if you heard that question in regards to when folks will refuse to wear masks, even when there's a state mandate, even if it's at the schools at some point. And our response to that as a school is there any kind of waiver or any information we should be providing to parents in regards to if the governor says everyone must be wearing masks at school? Any opinion on that?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me tonight, everybody. It's a great question, and I'm gonna somewhat give you the lawyer answer. You can absolutely mandate this. The difficulty that we're telling all of our clients is that there just may be some significant difficulties in doing so, and your board member pointed out what those would be, and it's whether or not you're willing to say, look, we're putting this policy in place, it's absolutely mandatory. If you don't abide by it, then I guess this isn't the school for you. You can absolutely take that approach if that is, what the board votes to do in putting a policy like a mask requirement in place. It's just like any other decision. If that's, the direction you want to go with your particular school, it's permissible. I'll be honest, we're not taking a perspective, or we're not taking a position in terms of advising you to do it or not do it. It's up to you. You legally can. We think there are a myriad of practical concerns about a required mask policy. There could be, especially where you guys are at, from August to even October, hot periods of time, wearing the masks in or outdoors could pose some heat exhaustion concerns. In addition, enforcing a mask requirement may require much more time and energy than I think anyone realizes would be required of your staff. So it's really more analyzing that type of a mandate from a practical perspective. Now, from what your board member was just saying, if this is a mandate by the state, well, that's out of your hands then. It's a mandate by the state. I can virtually guarantee you that's not going to happen. Because if, as you pointed out earlier from our conversation earlier, Michael, that if the state were to mandate that, they have to pay for everything. They've got enough to cover right now. That's not going to happen. So we totally leave it up to every school to develop their own mask policy that makes the best sense for your students, your staff, and your families. Could you impose, as you proposed, a waiver of sorts? Sure. You also can't mandate that they sign it. So you're back to the, well, if you don't sign it, then you're not a student here any longer.
Erica, would you say it's kind of like if a school's trying to patrol the street out in front of them, we can't give tickets or enforce a law in a sense unless they rewrite the laws, but is that the issue? Is the enforcement of it would be kind of null, because as a school, it's not like we can cite a kid for not wearing a mask. Is that maybe part of the angle on that?
Yeah, there's part of it that's there. I mean, yes, you could liken it to a dress code requirement. Did you really want to move forward with doing discipline for something like that? You absolutely could. We're just saying from a practical perspective, it's going to be virtually impossible, especially for lower grades. I mean, think about half the time where you're trying to get K through 3 to stay in their seats. This is just an added layer that may prove to be much more difficult than it seems. And again, yes, it would be fantastic if we could just rely on, well, the state's making us do so. We don't have a choice. I almost virtually guarantee you're not going to have that protection. It's going to be your decision, and then you have to be the mask police. And as you pointed out, you're going to be fighting against a student who says, well, my mom told me I don't have to.
Well, yeah. And I'm only talking in the event that the state mandates it. And the opposite side of it, we're talking about the kid who says, I don't have to because my parents say no, right? Well, now what happens when that mom shows up and says, why is my kid in this classroom with the kid not wearing a mask? Now you have all of there's going to be more of those parents who are going to be pissed and making demands of the school and staff and teachers and emails and everything else, saying, why are these kids in class when the state said to do this? These kids aren't. My kid came home, said 3 kids in the class of however many aren't wearing a mask, and my kids are. Now you're going to have these upset parents. So I'm just bringing this up. I'm not saying we should do something now. I would really like for you guys to have a discussion. What does admin think? What do the teachers think? What is some of the ideas? I mean, you guys are the ones who are going to have to deal with it.
Yep.
Me personally, I don't think it's a board decision we would make today for it. I don't want to be sitting here with families in front of us dealing with this 6 months from now. We can possibly try to head it off now.
And the mandates could change. I mean, Eric and I were talking about that earlier. They can make changes every other week. So part of this policy, it gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of what we need to do and be able to adjust when we need to adjust. The mask on here right now is optional, but like Erica pointed out, if they say it's law, it's going to supersede a school board policy. It's just part of the nature of the law. So Bonnie, you had something?
Yeah.
If you could use the mic, I'm not sure the public could hear you without it.
Okay. I think the key here is that it's even what I heard today, if you're 6 feet away from each other, you're outside, you don't have to wear a mask. My concern would be, have we addressed the fact that when the kids are out in PE, they shouldn't be wearing a mask? Then that really inhibits breathing. I know I have a problem just wearing a mask inside sometimes. So I would never want to see our kids being mandated to wear a mask when they're outside in activity.
Yeah, and in answer to that question and Mr. Wolf's question, yeah, absolutely. The administration, Josh and I sat down, Lisa sat down the other day too, and just kind of went through what does it look like to help prevent communicable diseases at our schools. And yeah, there's a lot of that. You got kids with asthma, and they can't have masks on. So you've got a lot of those concerns. But you're right. If you've got folks that are vehemently against the fact that somebody next to them is not wearing a mask, and the board policy says it's optional, well, that's the board policy. And that's what we as administrators fall back on, is this is what's been agreed to by the leaders of the school and the leadership team. And so you'll see also on the surveys I showed tonight where parents think masks should be and some of those requirements.
But that's not the concern. This is a great policy. I think everybody believes it should be optional. The concern is if it becomes mandated by the state.
Right.
And
luckily,
they would have to provide the masks at that point.
They'll have to provide that.
And they're not going to do that. That's what.
Let me give you one other example that's really similar. The vaccination laws. If you're not vaccinated, you cannot enroll in school. Well, we have a lot of folks that are against vaccinations. So they had to go independent study. They don't have an option. So if somebody shows up and says, I don't want to vaccinate, you can't make me, you can't enroll in school. So that would have to be the kind of teeth that legislation would provide, is if you're not wearing a mask, you can't go to a public school.
So the state would do that for us.
We would
have to do anything.
Not at this time.
The state will take care of it if that comes to fruition.
But right now they said, here's our guidance, and you're allowed to do what you feel is appropriate for your community. Did I get that right, Erica? I probably have to unmute you, and I'm so slow at that. I'm going to assume I'm right.
All right, Mr. Gordon, very good discussion. On this item, this action item, which is our board policy. Mr. Wolf, did you want to add anything else? I know it's a real interest of yours. Do you want to anything else?
I just add one more question.
Okay.
Have we thought of, or does any kind of tracking system exist?
Could you speak a little louder?
Any tracking system? Our ability to kind of identify, okay, these kids have had it. These families have had it. And I give you the example. I was in Calexico today, working with the police department and talking about a certain house, and they have a whole database tracking every single house, 40,000 residents in the city of Calexico. You guys have that, Palm Springs? I've never heard of this. So he calls up dispatch, they run the house and see if it's a part of their COVID, if they've identified cases within that household, that address by address.
Right.
So, I thought that was a good idea. When they go to calls for service, they know right away, oh, that this is what this house is. This is how we're going to respond to it. But is there a need, I'm only bringing this up, I'm not saying I want anything. Yeah,
No, it's what we talk
I'm
about.
just bringing these things up, these ideas up. Is there a need for us to have some type of system in place where we can track the students who end up coming down with COVID, or ones who display symptoms, but then they're not?
Right.
So we know in case, people start panicking, or they have siblings that's in the house.
Yeah, that's all got to play itself out with the health department as well. But we currently have an Illuminate system which will red flag what we want to red flag on a student's file. So you go into a system, and if the nurse puts in or the health tech puts in, hey, we have a COVID-related case or symptoms, that would be identified by any staff member that's pulling up that file. So that's the nice piece to our Illuminate system that can do that. But yeah, by all means, the CDC is going to ask us as well to keep a log of kids with symptoms. We're going to be looking at testing. There's some testing procedures that have to be in place. If you've got some symptoms, you can come back to school earlier if you've had 2 tests greater than 24 hours. So all of that's got to be logged and put together, because the CDC is going to ask us, what room is that student in? Who has that student been around? And then we're going to have to take their guidance on what to do next.
So we're prepared for that.
I would say we're 75% there.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
That's all I got.
Okay, Mike? Bonnie, any final questions? I'll entertain a motion on this action item A.
I think Bonnie said she.
I'm ready to make a motion.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
Yeah, we have to have this in place.
I have a
before we have
motion.
summer school
I'll make
start.
the motion.
I have a second. Did you make the motion?
I tried to,
Okay, did you?
yes.
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. Sorry about that. I don't think the mask benefits my hearing, but it certainly doesn't help anything. So anyway, we're gonna vote on this.
Aye.
Okay, good discussion, Mr. Gordon. We're going to move to action item number B, which is the approval or injury and illness prevention plan.
I just want to make sure the public can still see what I'm looking at. I don't know, Mr. Osborne, if you can confirm that. Again, switching between programs sometimes, so I want to make sure.
So,
Mrs. Klein, I'm going to keep you unmuted for now, just so you know, and then I think from there we'll let you go, or you're welcome to stick around. So the injury illness prevention plan, I've already kind of explained to you in your board doc, the little precursor I sent you. And really, it's just to replace our old injury illness prevention plan. It's an OSHA requirement that we have it in play, and just talks about our safe working practices at our schools, making sure that people do stay injury and illness free. And so you probably heard it referred to as the IIPP. It's our recommendation, and it's part of the Hansberger and Klein group that developed this document for us to be in compliance. So,
Mike, because we went over this already, as far as the email, is this something that you have to show for the purpose of the board meeting, or can we make a motion to go ahead and approve it without going over every page?
no, you're more than welcome to approve if you don't want to go over every page. I only do this for your convenience.
Yeah.
So if there's a board member that hasn't had an opportunity to take a look at it, but I really do it at a convenience for you. So if you've looked at it, you feel comfortable with it, you can make a motion and do what you need to do.
I'll make the motion.
I have a motion.
Second,
I have a second. Any final comments or questions? No, I'm gonna ask for a vote.
yes.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Booth.
I like the fact that you sent all this.
I didn't see in the instructional minutes. This is really an interesting situation. We find ourselves in a really interesting situation with instructional minutes, because perhaps you know, that's how we get paid. And the governor, I think, has till the end of the month to decide whether he's going to waive all that and allow something other than for funding purposes. And based on what the state superintendent has put out and the county superintendent put out, they expect something other than an instructional minute program. And so it's highly unlikely that that model is going to continue in perfect attendance. So anyway, long story short, but we still need to do it.
Well, and I wanted to table item C tonight because of that very reason, in terms of flexibility of instructional minutes. So I'm not going to ask that anything be approved
Okay.
tonight.
All right.
We are not looking at scaling back our regular 5-day program instructional minutes, just so you're aware of that. But we are looking at the flexibility with the hybrid ICE.
Right. Okay. So you wanna pull item C, and we'll do it some other time.
I think there's a question from Mr. Wolf.
Okay.
I just wanted to know if there was any more talk of,
Aaron, could you speak a little louder?
yeah, is there any more talk of funding for like a distance learning program from the state?
In terms of funding, there's a few statutes that have to change. One being the attendance. If they're not on campus, you can't count them as attending at this time unless they're on independent study. So our fallback is going to be, we're going to put them on independent study, and we would then we would just get full funding from that point. So if we didn't have, if that statute doesn't change, there'll be independent study students doing the iSchool program because we won't see funding if it doesn't change. Now, if they change it and say, you don't have to be at school every day, and the school can count you by enrollment or something as opposed to being in a seat, in a chair, in a classroom, then we wouldn't have to do the independent study, but they've not made that change yet.
So if we were to go Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, every other Friday, that's not going to count as independent study one day.
That would have to be independent study the way the law reads right now.
So even though they're here every other day, we can still get independent study.
Yeah.
Credit.
They could be here 5 days a week and get independent study. There's some schools that are independent study schools and their kids show up 5 days a week. It's just a different funding model. So, same funding. Yeah, it's not different. Good question.
Okay, anything else? Did you have any other questions?
No.
Aaron, did you? Okay, I'm going to move to action item D, which is the EPA resolution with regard to teacher funding. Mr. Gordon?
Yeah, so this is something we do every year annually. I'm not sure why my logo is blacked out on this view, but that's the logo. So the Education Protection Account was funding that was provided from the state of California for schools as part of Jerry Brown's work. And so we've been doing this, as you can see, since 2012 when Prop 30 was enacted. And we always have allocated the funding to teacher salaries. The law requires and the statutes require it does not go to administrative salaries. So Tracy takes whatever you agreed to tonight, and we're hoping the resolution for teacher salaries is fine with you, and she codes all of this funding to teacher salaries. It's basically part of all of our principal apportionment. It's our main funding. It's just a portion of it that the association said we want that portion of funding not to go to administrators, and so that's why we've always coded it to teachers.
Okay, I will, any questions on that? I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. I have a motion and a second. And we'll vote, Aaron? Aye. 4-0. Thank you very much. Okay, final budget. It's budget time, and it's getting down to the nubs here, Mr. Gordon. We got fiscal year starts in a couple of weeks, and
it does, yes, exciting times. I appreciate the board allowing us to delay this meeting a little bit past what the legislature's budget when it came out on Monday. And so I'm going to just take you through a quick presentation in regards to that, so just bear with me. Okay, and again, can members of the public see? Thank you. All right. We have a couple of budgets going on at the state. You have the governor's budget and you have the legislative budget, okay? And they're at odds with each other. They have not been agreed to at this point. So any numbers that you see tonight may change over the weekend. They might change within 2 weeks. The governor may send back the budget. So you can see there, that's that first bullet. We've got, he could do line item vetoes and ask for certain kinds of line items to be sent back. He can send the whole budget back to the legislature. So we're a little bit in this limbo land, but what you'll see tonight, I think you'll be comfortable with in terms of the numbers we're using. The governor's trying to work to make sure that cuts are made, and then the legislature is actually trying to keep funding static so we don't lose money. We'd be basically self-funded based on what last year's funds were. So there'd be like a 0%, revenue increase or decrease, which is by far much better than what the governor was proposing. So it's surprising to see the legislature was not happy that the governor was taking such deep cuts into education. And so I'll talk about that a little bit. So that's good news in the sense we use the governor's budget to develop what we have for you tonight, which is the more conservative budget in this sense. Okay, the proposed additional funding for SPED is in question. It's between $75,000 and $100,000, so it's a big chunk. The governor wants it. The legislature has said they're not really interested yet in that, so we're not sure how that's going to come out. Even if we lose that funding, and let's say the legislature gets their way, their model will provide more money than the SPED funding would have provided through the governor's budget. So we would see more revenues above and beyond. just some real quick notes for you. Tracy and I worked on the baseline budget together. We've worked with our finance committee. Get this thing out of there. We've had just in our budget you see tonight, we've got necessary increases that need to happen for state teachers' retirement, payroll, insurance, all those things that have to go into the budget year to year. And then we've been monitoring all of the state adjustments every day. I've been looking to see what differences there might be. The principals at the sites have provided us with discretionary budgets that we provide a chunk of money for them to use this last year. And so they provided to us as well budgets. And the budget you're going to look at tonight involves all of our restrictive funding, which is like special education, food services, student council, all of those little tiny budgets, and believe me, there's a bunch of them in there, are built into one big budget for you to look at, okay? And if I just talked about the finance committee, we met and talked about increases and decreases in the budget. Some assumptions in this budget, we're looking at 970 kids ADA. You're probably wondering, Mike, we were at 997 this year. Why is that? Well, currently we're looking at a loss of enrollment in one of our TK classes. I think today, or the last week I checked, it was about 49 students that were enrolled that were funded students. And we need about 51 to make 3 classes make sense. And so that 4th class, it's about 17 kids every class that we need to have funded to keep the class above a 0 and balance that budget for that class. And so we're at 49 right now that I'm aware of. So at this point, we're going to give it till July 1. That was my cutoff date. That's what I've been telling the public, to see if we have more enrollment for TK so that we can try to open that 4th TK class. But as it looks like now, it looks like we have enough for 3. Okay. And I'll make that decision starting around July 1 if we don't have enough enrollment to fund that class. And I'll be in touch with you about that. Budget is based on the governor's revise. I talked about that. 0% COLA, 9.3% negative. I should have a negative in front of that. Reduction in revenue. We plan for 7 extra families of our employees to go on insurance, which we do every year because we're not too sure who's going to come and go on our insurance. If there's a qualifying event, husband or wife lose a job, they put the whole family on the new insurance. That can result in about $120,000 in savings above and beyond what's in the budget. So that's in there as a padding in case we have those 7 families that say they need insurance at that time. And maybe they're taking like the cash payout right now.
Ms. Good, let me interrupt you on that whole subject of health and welfare insurance. Is the trend seems to be downward a little bit because of the whole, nobody's getting their varicose veins taken out because you can't get to the hospital. So is it sort of flat, or what's the expectation for health and welfare? So,
the actual cost?
Yeah, right.
Good question. So the cost of insurance is continually going up. So we're expecting 10% increases from here on out, year to year. Some years could be 15%, some years could be 5%. The way we were able to mediate it this year through our finance committee was we provided a little lesser plan than what we've had in the past, free to our employees. They could buy up to the next plan if they wanted to. And then dental, we did charge families for dental insurance. I think the max amount you're paying if you take the dental and the traditional HMO that we're offering, like my family takes, I think it's $90 a month total that we are doing for employee contributions. That's why we were able to keep our insurance costs this year to less than 1%. Does that answer that question? But the cost of insurance is going to continue to rise. So, we're looking at maybe $17,000 in a premium for a family like mine. And next year you can expect probably a 10% increase from the insurance companies on that. Another $1,700.
All right. Oh, thank you.
We have, does not account for the iSchool program. This budget that I'm going to show you does not have iSchool numbers in it. I'm going to show you that separately. Pay scales and pillar scales continue. We didn't see a necessity to freeze those scales at this point, and I'll show you why, because how the numbers come out. Employees not on any pay scale in the past, just so you know, it's been all the administrators, independent study, the behavior specialists. We're not on a scale. So the board has always just passed on the same amounts that the scales increased by, which has been in the past 3.5%. So I want you to know that's in the budget. Okay, that's still in there. All right, that's independent study teachers, all the administrators, and our behavior specialists. The finance committee recommendations, freeze field trip funding, but keep the expenses in the budget until the COVID-19 issues subside, allowing for trips to happen. Still plan on 7th and 8th grades to attend Catalina. So keep the money in the budget. It's going to be in there. You're going to see in our budgets, we did not take it out, but we'd like to see if we could just freeze that and then reconsider maybe in December once things happen, but still commit to those Catalina trips. okay? And a lot of the money is being carried over, so we feel like we owe it to the kids to send them if it's safe on Catalina. Amend pillar scale to spread out pay between novice and professional level teachers. I'll show you a chart what that means in a little bit. Eliminating staff bonuses, classroom supply cards, and staff food. That was also Finance Committee recommendation. And this is also in the budget. You're going to see these cuts are in there. Cut conferences and travel. So just basically essential conferences for compliance and safety. Non-essential books and supplies. Those are just going to be principals talking with their staff and saying, do you really need to have 50 of these new novels? Could the old ones still work? That kind of an idea. And the sites did cut 10% out of their budgets already, okay? Do not replace non-essential staff positions. Again, what's non-essential, those kinds of things. But these are positions that we wouldn't necessarily need to operate and be in compliance. So they could be intervention positions, tutors, those kinds of things. And then we could move them around. If they are a position that they are, for instance, a reading specialist, and they have their teaching credential, they might take an high school position and not replace the reading specialist necessarily, but that money that they were costing to the school would just be transitioned over into a new position. You'd see some savings there. Eliminate independent contractors. We had independent contractors that were cleaning facilities and doing mowing. We're going to expect to hire some employees part-time to cover those costs, save us a lot of money as well. The CCSA membership dues, we have 2 memberships that we're dealing with right now. We're looking at just staying with one charter association called CSDC, which I think our philosophies tend to align a little better with as well. Cut facility improvements down to essential projects for safety and compliance. And then we cut the 10% from the site budgets we talked about as well. Just to show you the pillars chart, I'm sorry, it's a little small. I think that doesn't help at all. This is our current pay scale for our teaching staff, certificated teachers. You can see the novices right now, if you come in to teach at Inland Leaders, it's $54,080 a year. The minimum wage is driving that to $58,240 starting January 1. So the Finance Committee felt like this was an appropriate scale to go from here to here. We felt like the board should see this because it does bump up some of the scale a little bit, but this has to happen for anybody on a minimum salary. The minimum salaries equation is 2 times the minimum wage times a certain amount of hours in the year, okay? So this is 2 times the minimum wage to make a person a salaried employee so that you're not doing hourly clock in and out, which would be really difficult with teachers because they work all sorts of hours. So this scale here to the right shows you the novice steps 1, 2, and 3, which basically a teacher after 2 years being a novice, we're trying to get them over to professional, but they could stay a novice for 10 years if they don't progress. Oops, sorry, going backwards. And then the next one would go from 55 to 59,240. It would change. The 57,731 would go to 62,240, and the 62,116 would go to 61,240. Just a little bit of a difference between those different years because the way we originally had it, all those professional in red were still making 58,240 because it was higher than what this pay was right here. See, they've all got to go up because of minimum wage. So we spaced them out a little bit so that a teacher who's been here 6 years, let's say a professional 3, isn't making the same as a teacher who just started. So we felt like that scale was appropriate. It's going to cost between $15,000 and $16,000 to do that system. And we felt like it in terms of morale and feeling like, okay, I've been teaching here 5 years, but I'm getting paid the same as a teacher who's been 1 year, it just made sense. So that was the Finance Committee's recommendation. We looked at 3 or 4 different scenarios. So here's the budget.
Like on that,
Yep.
on that list, you have the master and then you have the lead. The teachers completing that program are the masters or the leads?
Eric, could you speak up? I couldn't hear the question.
The question was, the teachers that are completing the programs currently are going from the professional column to the master column. So we don't have anybody who's going from master to lead at this time.
Do we have any leads?
No, we don't have any leads. We only have, novice professionals and masters. And novice moves are made by the discretion of the principal. After their 2 years of evaluation, they're in their classrooms. And the professional to master levels are through what we call that TAC committee. And so that's where that big jump is there. Okay. All right, here's the budget. So the first column you can see is right here is just going to give you the items that we're budgeting for. The second one is what we currently have a budget for, right here in this column. This is Tracy's best estimate as of second interim, which was in March. And then we have our current budget numbers here, and the difference between last year's budget, I should say this year's budget and next year's budget. We're so close to next year. So that's the difference. So if you look at the first one, the revenue total, and I'm sorry, I wish I could blow it up a little farther. If you look at the revenue total, last year we received $9,819,555. This year we're looking at $9,113,000 based on all the cuts, about a 9.3% reduction. And in my notes it says that's not all state reduction because of some of our TK. So we're losing kids in our ADA. So that reduction is also part of losing some kids in our ADA. So it's about a $700,000 difference in terms of just revenue, okay, or 9.3%. The certificated salaries, you can see what those did. Those are natural increases because of, if we don't freeze the salary scale, that's this budget. This is still offering the same scale, everything business as usual. So no freezes. The next one, classified salaries, there's minimum wage increases, so there's a little bit of money there that we need to consider. Employee benefits have gone up because STRS, although we're getting a little relief on STRS from the state, it sounds like. Our medical benefit is at that less than 1%. So we really did a good job keeping that to about $52,000. Books and supplies, we actually took down a little bit. You can see the difference there. Services and operating expenses went down quite a bit, and that's because of the use of contractors, bringing in part-time employees to help cover those positions. Also, there's some costs, some natural costs with like our Illuminate program. We're gonna just not use part of that program this next year. They're going out of business for the system that we currently use, and just being more efficient with our operating expenses. So a lot of that is transitioning from 5,000 series, and those people become new hires in the 1,000 series with certificated salaries, okay? Capital outlay is our facilities for the most part, and big purchases, and you've got a decrease there, again, just dealing with safety and compliance issues. And then you can see our total expenses is about up $142,000 than it was last year. And you've got the overall net income, what we expect to end up, oh man, love it when that happens. What we expect to end up with is at 86,000, excuse me, 440. So I think you saw about a month ago, I was showing you numbers like $150,000, $200,000. So with the governor's numbers, what he's interested in using, which is the more conservative numbers in the legislature, we're still looking at close to $100,000 above zero at the end of next year. Again, you have padding of about $120,000 in insurance there, and you have, oh, that's about most of it. There's about most of your padding is there. So I wanted to show you that. Myself, I told you I'm trying to get us to zero, and we got above it. And so I thought that was good. I told the finance committee anything above that will help the board make decisions in terms of what to do with salaries, which is over 80% of our costs, salaries and benefits. So that's the recommended budget I have for you tonight, based on finance committee, based on Tracy and I getting together and piecing all this out, and based on the governor's budget. Now, if the legislature gets their way, you could probably see that ending balance of $86,000 probably go up to more like $286,000. Okay.
Well, and then at that point,
Turn on.
I think it is,
There you
yeah.
go.
At that point, we could reconsider some of the things that we've dropped off. Is
Absolutely.
that right? During the school year even?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only thing, because this includes Chromebook replacements, there's not a whole lot of cuts that are going to be very apparent to anybody, except for those field trips from August to December. Other than that, I don't think you're going to see, and unless you're the fourth TK teacher and you've been reassigned and you're doing something different. But I don't think a typical kid going in a classroom is going to notice much difference in terms of those cuts. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gordon. Questions? Questions about the budget?
I can go through the rest of the presentation. If you want to adopt this budget now, you might want to do a motion to do that before I move on to iSchool. But
I'd like to make that recommendation. I'm thrilled.
Make the recommendation to approve the budget.
Approve the budget,
Okay.
absolutely.
I will, I have a motion to approve the budget. Do I have a second? Hey, I need final comments, questions before we vote on the budget. If not, I'll entertain votes. Aaron? Aye. I vote aye. 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 4-0. Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Okay.
all right, quickly, not quickly, but stop me if I go fast. I've been running on coffee all day. So iSchool data, we sent out a parent survey. I wanted you just to understand some of the results from that. I also have it on my computer, so if you want to see more detail, you have questions, I'll pull that up. We have 84 currently enrolled students who are interested in the hybrid program or iSchool that are currently with us right now enrolled. There's 129 students that were on the wait list that indicated they had interest in attending iSchool. Okay, so we sent this to our wait list kids as well, or families, I should say. 30 teachers indicated they would be confident using Zoom in their class next year, or confident but may need support. That's a combination. There was like 8 people that were like, I'm very confident this. There were 22 that said, I may need some support, okay? 2 families indicated they would drop from ILCS if there was no hybrid program. I thought that was interesting, just 2. And then 27 students would not return if class sizes and the campus remains the same as prior to COVID-19. And 61 students said maybe. 60 of their families, but they're quite student. They indicated maybe. So you've got a little bit of kind of like, what does that mean, right? So that doesn't necessarily give us a lot of information, but just some information in terms of if things were normal, you might have this group of kids opting for maybe a different option. iSchool Development Innovation Team has met twice to discuss possible program structure, hurdles, next steps. The classes, what we're looking at right now, and again, these ideas are just ideas. They're flowing, and we're trying to get structure to something that's very unstructured. And so we're trying to create options, make sure that they're high quality and that they're budget friendly. So the iSchool development that I'm working on is trying to make it so that that budget you just approved, there's no impact. The only impact would be is if our costs go up, our revenues go up to meet it. And that's my goal, so that I don't come back at the end of the year and say, it cost us $150,000 to do this. I'm trying to make everything break even. And you'll see that in a minute. So we've got iSchool classes can take interested students from the current student population, combine them with students from the wait list, okay? So we could have specifically individual classes set aside, and a lot of the teachers, not a lot, a few of the folks in the innovation team, that might work best for their grade level. So to give you an example, I think we have 8 in kindergarten that are interested. Their first choice was hybrid. They're currently going into kindergarten next year. Their first choice was hybrid. So we take those 8 kids out of the classrooms, which reduces class sizes for social distancing and trying to help with that. We don't backfill it. And we bring in another 22 waitlist kids. There were 29, I think, on the waitlist that said they wanted kindergarten hybrid. 22 plus the 8 came from our current classes. That makes a class of 30. 15 meet on Monday, 15 meet on Tuesday, and so on, okay? And that teacher, that's a new teaching position. So that new teacher is basically your hybrid teacher that's working with that kindergarten hybrid class every other day. And so you have that opportunity for that. And Lisa and I are talking about these facilities, and the church is talking about allowing us to use these facilities now where you're standing or sitting. And so that would be a very valid, I think, option for those students. You're probably asking, why not backfill those classes? And I'm kind of just summarizing everything that's on here. But the ability is, if that kindergarten kid leaves, like Mrs. Sanchez says, then next year that space would still be open, because those 22 kids that came from the wait list are funding that class, okay? So remember, we're trying to get above 17 to fund the class. So that would be the funding part of it. We would just take those 8 kids out of those kindergarten classes, and now you've got room next year when they go to first grade. If they're like, this is just not working, now you have the option to send those kids back to that first grade classroom. So that, I think, would be a nice, clean way to do that. We could fill those classes, but now you're dealing with, okay, who's going to be in the first grade class next year? Or a teacher that says, as a hybrid teacher, this kid needs 5 days a week in kindergarten. Is there anything we can do with them? Yeah, we can put them back in the 5-day-a-week class.
So that's a question that I have. So we would be able to.
Aaron.
So that's a question that I have, or not really a question, but more, you can talk more about that. So if we have, my daughter is going into 3rd grade, but I'm using her as an example.
Yeah, go for it.
She says, we say we want her in the hybrid program. And we determine it's just not working. We get our class down to, the 17 kids for social distancing and everything else, right? But now I want to put her back in the classroom. So that 17 goes up to 8.
Yep.
We're okay with that? Like,
I don't know if there's any other way around that.
so we're going to say, yes, those kids who are struggling in the hybrid can go back. But if a kid who's on the wait list, who gets into the hybrid program, wants to go into the full-time program because they're struggling in the hybrid,
right,
we're going to say no.
Or we're going to say it's for 1 year. It's just for this year, but you have a student who's already here preceding you, So you're gonna have to go back in the lottery with the rest of the siblings, the folks that are trying to get that spot. So these ideas are not on paper for you to make a decision on, but that's exactly the conversations we have to have when we get to this policy in July, is to say, this is what the policy is gonna say. But I think that would be reasonable. If a student who's coming in as a hybrid off the wait list, not allowing them to leapfrog the kid who's been here previously to them, to that five-day week spot. So I think that the message to the kids that are currently with us, I think you'll get more participation in the hybrid program if they know there's a safety net.
Yeah.
So this provides that safety net. The brand new kids to us, we would say, look, you're a hybrid student. You're not going to leapfrog onto the 5-day a week. And if we make a decision to put you into the 5-day a week because we need that more instruction, it's going to be, you're going to have to give up that seat the following year if it's needed.
Now, are we thinking about this hybrid program? I know this is, I'm talking way down the road, right? But is this a program we're thinking we're going to continue with? Like it's something that's going to sustain itself for a school? So if that is the case, that kid who gets into the hybrid program this year, instead of going, if he wants into the school full time, he goes on the waiting list. But if he wants to stay in, or she wants to stay in the hybrid program, then they would be in that program. So they can continue within that program.
I think the goal from here on out, the COVID is part of the craziness right now that we're trying to figure out, okay, can we do social distancing strategy with a hybrid and pay for it? I think we can. But in the future, my idea is you would separate that. If a communicable disease is not an issue, you would have kids signing up for the hybrid program, kids signing up for 5 days a week, and those would be separate programs like independent study is right now with our regular day classes. So, the goal would be to have 25, 26 hybrid kids or 30 hybrid kids that are just running on the hybrid program. They have a facility, they have a place to go. I think I put up here, like at California Street, we do have a few spaces. I don't look to the right or anything, but I guess I'm online. But we have a few spaces we could use, but they could also come in a second session later afternoon. So I'm a 6th grade hybrid teacher. Mr. Lou's done teaching at 1. I come in at 1:30 and I meet with my hybrid kids from 1:30 to 4:30 and the facility is there. And probably 4:30 is still a reasonable end time. So there's that option as well to make that work. It's gonna be key is getting a hold of our families and talking with them on the phone one-on-one and going, okay, what are you thinking? To make sure that we have the enrollment. Now there's other options. So that's really for grade levels that are feeling like we don't know if we can take this on and do it effectively. We probably need to hire a hybrid teacher who has a blended learning kind of push. Like we're pushing this blended kind of learning. So we have other grade levels. We have a teacher that's already said to me, Mike, I'm willing to take all the hybrid kids from the grade level and regular day kids to fill my class. So I'm a 6th grade teacher. You give me all 12 of those kids that want hybrid. Give me the other 15 that are coming from the rest of the class, or 14 to make 26, which is our normal day classes. And those 12, 6 will come on Monday and 6 will come on Tuesday. I'll have a smaller class size during the day, but I feel like I can do this synchronously and with recorded lessons and meet that need. And I would ask that teacher to enroll 1 to 2 more kids off the wait list to pay for a stipend to help them. So like there's a $5,000 stipend for doing this. Let's put a kid in your class. We're getting about $7,500 for them. That's going to cover the stipend and the computer and the tablet you're probably going to need and some of the equipment. So that's another option that we can run at our grade levels, meet the need of the current students we have. A couple from the wait list would get a benefit from that, but it would still be, it would be facility friendly. We wouldn't have to, do second sessions and things like that. So all of that said, that's a lot of that's on here for you in terms of some narrative. But that's kind of the going thoughts right now. It could look different at different grade levels based on the expertise and the comfortability that our staff have. But we do have some folks in the wings, I think, that are ready to take it on.
Do you know what the breakdown is of the 129
I do.
students on the wait list?
Yeah, I do.
Aaron, I didn't hear the question.
What is the breakdown? Does he know what the breakdown is of the 129 students?
Okay. You mean break level?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see, what do we call that?
Wait list, the survey monkey?
Not the wait list, but the, well, actually, I'll get it for you. I don't want to belabor the meeting too much, but there is a breakdown that shows currently enrolled students, and there is a breakdown that shows all the wait list kids.
And
So
who is interested?
yeah, it's all numbers, not who, but just by numbers right now.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have all the emails of the folks that said they are interested.
Okay. And if we were to move to this hybrid program, and let's say we need 17 kids to make it work, to pay for the teacher and all that kind of stuff, right? And one of the kids now, we have 17, and one of the kids who's a full-time student here,
Okay.
in the classroom says, hey, I don't want to, or the parents say, this isn't working for my kid. So the kid goes back to the classroom. Now we're down to 16 students. Will we cancel the class?
In terms of the hybrid class?
Yeah.
So the strategy on that is,
Fall below the number.
yeah, we're looking at if it's like an independent study teacher, it's the same thing. It depends on how many kids you're teaching. So we could do the pay based on the amount of students that you're teaching. So if right now, because those are probably pretty up and down, just like independent study is, we could say, look, it's $2,000 a student, 30 kids is $60,000, which is really close to what we're gonna have to pay a minimum wage salary anyway. So, you know, $2,000 a student, if it falls below a certain amount, that pay would fall at that point. So, I mean, there's some different ways of looking at it in terms of HR, but
Mr. Gordon, do you see it available for every grade level?
I do, except TK.
Except TK?
I don't think TK would be wise, but I see it really a K-8.
Okay.
7-8 will be unique, but we think we have some folks that might be in the wings that could handle language arts and social studies, share a group math and science.
Right.
They're doing 7th and 8th swaps. We've got some ideas for that.
I suspect we're going to get some information on this that was sequestered period of time. The question is, always comes to my mind, people coming and going. You know, you fill out a survey and you say, I'm a little concerned, I think I'll try high school. But you don't know what that is. You haven't been there, you haven't touched it, you haven't smelled it, you haven't felt it. You're really not too sure what it is. So I think it's a great idea. I'm really strongly in favor of it. I just think we need to be built in. I think Mr. Wolf is right on target. Build in some systems so when people change and decide this is not for me or it is for me or I want more we can pull off the wait list, I guess, but less makes it more difficult. So I think if we sort that out in a fair way, either through lottery or wait list and then have a reasonable stipend. So there's a real incentive out there to, you know, get into the next generation of instruction. So anything else on this?
Well, I've got I guess you'd say proposed budget. You don't need to adopt this tonight by any means. I just wanted you to see some of the numbers we're looking at. 156 new kids would be off the wait list. And this is for a K through 8. This is eliminating one grade level right now that I know wants to do it on their own without the kind of separate.
I didn't hear you say what?
This is without one teacher who is looking to do this on their own. So without having to hire new teachers. So there are, between the K-8, there's 8 teachers in here, but there's actually, there'll be 9 that are running a hybrid program. You can see that I don't have any classified support in there right now, but if you get to the bottom line, the income you're looking at is about $376,000 that you would take on, and that's not backfilling the classes, that's allowing for social distancing. In the following year, my recommendation would be go ahead and backfill all those classes and roll the kids into those spots that were empty, and now you're looking at between $500,000 and $750,000 in increased revenue. So, you know, there's some real advantages to that, but I think backfilling the class at this point would be a little bit too aggressive in my mind. If we can make sure it comes out on paper, it's a good budget.
I don't think we should backfill classes this year, and we don't know what's going to happen.
I couldn't hear your question.
I don't believe we should backfill classes this year when.
You don't think we should what?
Backfill classes? Put kids in classes when there's empty seats.
I'm not sure I know what that means.
So let me give you an example. We're going to pull kids out of the regular classroom environment that want hybrid from our current students.
Yeah.
We are not going to replace their seats with new kids. The new kids are coming into the hybrid program, but those other seats.
The net increase is going to be only hybrid kids.
Correct.
Okay, that's what you meant.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
For at least the first year.
I'm sorry?
For at least the first year.
The first year.
And then you can discuss it moving forward.
So the next year, once this is kind of, well, hopefully the COVID issue has subsided and the social distancing is as much an issue, we could start doing the backfills. So recommendations from here, you've already done the board adoption for the, I should say the budget adoption. Develop and refine the iSchool based on demand, capacity, and enrollment. So just that flexibility, saying to the board, hey, we might have one grade level, there's only 2 kids from the wait list that want it. So we're going to have to kind of adjust to that. It's going to be based on demand. Reevaluate our revenue projections in December. Like I said, it could all change over the weekend, and I'm assuming everything's going to go up in terms of revenue. Continue to prepare for a recession for the next 2 years, at least. And so I'll be showing you some 5-year outlooks coming up. Tracy and I are working on those, but it's going to be a little tight for a while in our minds. All full-time new hires or new promotions to full-time would be provided with employee-only insurance at this time. That's probably the most controversial recommendation. And I'll be honest, I forgot to float that through the finance committee.
Slow down.
All full-time new hires or new promotions to full-time, you're part-time and you want to go to full-time or you're being offered that, would be provided with employee-only insurance at this time. And that sample iSchool budget that I showed you, those employees, the new employees that are taking positions, would be employee-only insurance. It would not be family-built insurance. You go from just over $17,000 an employee, if you offer their family insurance, to $5,500 per employee if you just offer employee insurance. And then revisit that once that employee's been here and we look at our revenues to make an adjustment at a point to raise them up to that same level. Question, is that legal? Can you discriminate that way between different employees? And yes, you can. You can do it by a point in time, like Marilyn will tell you, where you say, okay, we're only offering employee insurance from here on out. I think that's the basic standard that most charters have. They do employee-only insurance. We're one of the few that offer a family insurance plan. So it would be a negative for new hires coming in. But like I said, I think as things pick up, the board could reconsider that for future years. So that was just one of my recommendations that I wanted to run by you. And then if iSchool works well, we would fill the vacated regular day seats, like I talked about, the backfilling. And that's my guesstimate on what you'd be looking at in terms of additional revenues. Or I should say additional profit surplus, not revenue.
Let's talk a little bit about what we call it. There's distance learning, synchronous, asynchronous, hybrid, iSchool. It would be good if we had, I don't think it's going to be perfect, but probably need to define it a little bit better, a little more specifically, and then call it, I don't care really what we call it, but pick a name and sort of stay with it.
Yeah, we've used different names because different people have familiarity with different kinds of vocabulary words. So what we told our parents when they filled out the parent survey was it's a 2 days on site, 3 days at home. So I think most folks were thinking, okay, my kid's there full time on 2 days and 3 days they're at home learning. So we've called it, yeah, you're right. And we're trying to call it just iSchool to make it our program, maybe just us.
Learning program. And under that umbrella, you have your iSchool, you have your independent study.
Yeah, and even independent study is not even really distance learning in a sense because the parents are the teachers, and the independent study teachers really are their guides, you know, and they're doing the assessments as well. But this iSchool for parents is going to be a commitment. We don't want a kindergarten just sitting on a computer and watching a Zoom meeting. That's not effective. So that kindergartner is going to be here for 4 to 5 hours on a Monday, and that teacher is going to have to prep so that on Tuesday, when they're with their other students, that kindergartner has really effective instructional things going on. So they're on Smarty Ants, they're doing their reading, their parents helping them with things. They could tune in if they want to. They don't have to tune in. If you've got really good assignments going for those kids the next day. So,
Does Dr. Uriah, do you feel like this will work for kindergarten? Do you think they'll actually learn?
Yeah, we did have a conversation with parents. It's going to have to be different from the parents. I feel like that's one of the questions that we're going to have to ask when we screen for this high school. We need a screening process in place to make sure that it's the right fit for a family. And I believe that the parent has to be committed to being there, stay-at-home kind of situation to support that learning. And we will have to have assessments to make sure that that academic growth is taking place and have those kinds of conversations.
Okay. And for kindergarten, because these kids have never been in our school, if they do the iSchool program and it's not working, they need to go to school, are we going to put them in the classroom? Or are they just gonna have to go find another school?
Well, at this point, they have to find another school because they didn't get a seat.
Okay.
That's what we were talking about earlier, was do you let them leapfrog? Do you just do it for a year?
Right, but it's because it's like that, within that year.
Right.
You know, so they didn't get into, like, we have 20 kids in a kindergarten, the Stanley's class.
Right.
And now we have these high school kids, and it's just not working for one of the kids. My question is, are we gonna put them in Miss Stanley's class, and now that she has 21 kids? Or are we gonna say, no, you didn't get into the school, you're gonna have to go to your home elementary school?
We do that with independent study right now. Like if
Go to their home school.
Yeah, if you really feel like independent study is not effective for a student, we hold meetings and we say, look, it's time to exit. We really don't think it's appropriate for your student. It's not working. And so we make those recommendations. Yeah, good question. Yeah, there's a lot of scenarios to this for sure. All right. I wanted to just see, was there any consensus on the insurance? Because what I would have to do is go back to Marilyn and talk a little bit about our employee handbook and if there's amendments that need to happen. I don't know in terms of your thoughts or consensus on offering insurance, employee only versus family, for this type of season, I should say. And I'd like to see it as seasonal, not necessarily a flat out decision from here on. I mean, if we were in a recession for the next 10 years, okay, but if it's a seasonal thing, I felt like it was appropriate to ask the board about that.
I think it's appropriate.
Any problems with it? Okay. Well, Mr. Gordon, this comes under action. The COVID-19 summary report is our action item.
That's the next item.
Okay.
So that was my budget presentation. I'm done with that item.
Okay.
The
Thank
budget,
you.
you've given me consensus on where to go with the health situation, and then the next item is an actual.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we approve.
I have a motion to approve the COVID-19 summary report to the Department of Ed.
Second.
I have a second. Any final comments, question? No? Vote. Aye. Thorough. Thank you, Mr. Gordon. TK admission policy. This is the non-funded student permission issue.
So yeah, there's two policies we love to revisit every few months. It's TK admissions and dress code. And it's been a while for dress code, so that's good. But basically, Lisa is our TK warrior. So she's answering lots of calls and questions, and a lot of it is why aren't you enrolling more TKers? Well, all those questions are coming from folks that are partially funded or non-funded students. They don't have birthdays before December 2nd. So we're not going to enroll those students if we don't have funded students to provide the funding for that classroom. So she's having to kind of explain that over and over. Well, it's an administrative decision. We've got budgeted. So we just decided, why don't we put it in the language that the administrators can make a discretionary choice in terms of enrolling non-funded students based on issues such as class sizes, budgetary concerns, and overall TK enrollment, just so that she has an answer. Part of board policy is we as administrators can hold back on that enrollment until we actually have these factors worked out.
I'll go along with this if you also throw in that we don't have to hear about the dress code anymore.
I can't promise that.
All right.
Especially with masks, I can't promise that.
All right. So I'll entertain a motion on that item. Okay, the motion. Do I have a second? Okay. We'll vote on that. Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
You're welcome.
Just kidding about the dress code. We're always interested in the dress code.
When we talk about the dress code.
No, don't start to, no.
Students come forward.
No.
Board member Wolf said if you guys come forward with the dress code, he's going to implement a uniform.
Okay, moving along. We have no ratifications. I'm sorry?
I want us to be in uniform, so I welcome students.
I couldn't understand that. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just having a hard time hearing for some reason. Okay, the consent calendar.
You have your check register, you have your minutes.
Mr. Osborne is already, Mr. Osborne, you are in support of this book. Okay. So, would anyone like separate consideration for the? Okay, I will entertain then A through H for approval. I have a motion. I have a second. I have a vote. Okay. We do not have a closed session. I will entertain board member comments. Bonnie, you want to start?
I'm really excited that we don't have to cut
Yes.
the budget.
Yes.
I've been worried about that all month. And I was adamant at last meeting that we weren't gonna have, we were not cutting. If we had to go into reserves, I didn't want us to cut the budget. So I'm very thankful that you were able to do that, Mike.
That's Tracy Burson.
Praises to Tracy. That's wonderful.
Anything else? Mr. Wolf?
I just want to tell you, for everybody in here who's gotten a haircut, you guys look really good. Let me tell you, I come back and all of a sudden everybody's hair looks nice except for mine. Thank you guys for all your hard work and everything you guys are doing. I'm glad you got to the point where we're not having to touch teachers' salaries.
Right.
You got.
You don't mind if I call you Mike, right?
No, not at all.
Okay, all right.
Mike, if you talk loud, it's something.
Oh, okay, all right, cool. No, I just, again, Mike, thanks, and then the survey speaks for itself. I think we have a very optimistic school year ahead of us, so looking forward to it. Thank you to the board, and thank you everybody for being on board, and I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, I have two items. Well, the first one I want to do is see what you'd like to do on a July meeting.
The July meeting date? Yeah, of course.
Got my calendar open. What does July look like for you guys? Is it possible to? No, probably not possible not to have a July meeting. We got high school.
We tend to skip July, but
I don't think so. We gotta.
It's gonna be tough this year.
We gotta do high school.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be communicating with the board in terms of just the administrative procedures that we're
Yeah.
gonna roll out. So
Yeah.
that you don't have to
Yeah, we good. Okay.
but
What's are Mondays good for you folks? The 20th is a Monday, the 20th of July. What? I'm sorry. 20?
July 20th?
I'm leaving for Chicago the next day, and I usually revert it on and stay in hotel tonight. I may not be able to.
Okay.
But that's okay.
Well, is it Mike, would you rather do the earlier or later than the, we don't have to do it on a Monday.
When does summer school end?
Oh, 13th, what does the 13th look like for you? Is it too early?
I will not be here.
I'm sorry?
I will not be here.
Not available.
I won't be here on the 27th.
Did you say the 27th?
I won't be here the 27th.
27th, okay, so, do you think you can make it on the 20th?
I like to do it after summer school so we can kind of get an update.
I don't think
how it went.
so, because
Okay, well, what,
early the next morning.
no, okay, well, how do you, would you like me to try to find another,
I'm good up until the 20th. I'm like to the 17th.
What about anybody gone from the 21st to the 24th?
Yeah.
Okay.
uh,
I'm not sure we gotta get back till the 20th.
How about the 27th to the 31st?
so you're
I'm gone.
gone
Oh,
the
I'm gone
21st
now,
now,
too.
correct?
How about the 4th of August to the 7th, or the 3rd of August to the 7th of August? It's pretty late, but we could still,
Yeah, the 3rd?
Works for me.
3rd through the 7th of August?
Yep, I'm good.
What date, Mike?
August 3rd. There'll be probably some ratifications that you'll have to approve, but I'll make sure that you're in the loop on what that is.
It's Monday, August 3rd. Aaron, how's that grab you?
Yeah, that's good. We started the 6th, right?
20?
13th.
Yes.
You like
Okay,
5
should we set 5 or 6?
5 p.m. I got 5.
I can do 5.
5.
5. Shall we come back here, Mr. Gordon?
Yeah, this actually situation, I don't know, I'll have to find out from the public, works pretty well with this microphone system and everything. We think it's pretty good setup. So,
Really nice.
Okay, so are you okay, Bunny, with, okay, so Monday, August the 3rd, here at 5 p.m.
you got it.
All right, the other thing I want to do is have a letter for each one of you. This is a draft evaluation. I'm going to ask you to be looking at that as we travel this next month. And then I'm going to ask Mr. Gordon to put a closed session on that agenda that we just established for his evaluation process. So if you would make sure that that there's a session on the agenda for that meeting, Mr. Gordon would appreciate it. All right. That's I'm very excited about high school. I'm very excited about getting kids back in seats. I hope we can accommodate as many as we can, but also, spread it out a little bit. I think that'd be good. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for attending. We are adjourned.
Ms. Urban, good luck. I meant to say that. I forgot.
Everything's looking like it's coming together.